Closing parenthesis colon. At 22, he was running from a life that had already broken him. At 60, she believed life was finished with her. What happened when their paths crossed changed everything they thought they knew about love, time, and second chances. This is not a romance you expect, it's the one that stays with you forever. If you believe it's never too late and never too early to begin again, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay with us until the very last second, because this story will change how you see life. At 22 he found shelter not because he was looking for safety but because the rain had finally beaten him into surrender, the kind of cold rain that feels personal, as if the sky itself knows your name and all your failures. And when he knocked on the door of the old coastal house he expected nothing more than a dry corner and maybe a lecture, but at 60 she opened it with hands that had known both gentleness and grief, eyes that carried decades of silence, and a voice that had not expected to be used for beginnings again, because she had buried her husband 6 years earlier, buried her dreams quietly even before that, and learned to live inside routines that kept pain predictable. Yet there he stood soaked and shaking with a backpack that held everything he owned, and in that moment time bent in a way neither of them could explain, because he was not her past and she was not his future, and yet they became each other's present without asking permission. And she let him in not out of charity but because she recognized the look in his eyes, the same look she once had when the world told her she was finished before she was ready to stop. And he sat at her kitchen table sipping tea that tasted like memories he never had, listening to the clock tick like a heartbeat that refused to quit. And over the days that followed he learned her name was Margaret, though everyone once called her Maggie, a name she hadn't heard in years, and she learned his name was Eli, a name he barely answered to anymore because it reminded him of expectations he had failed, of a father who left early and a mother who stayed tired, of a talent for music that burned too bright and then burned him instead. And in the quiet mornings he fixed broken shutters, and in the long evenings she played old records that crackled with life, and they spoke in fragments at first, safe fragments, about weather and food and the sea, until one night the power went out and the dark forced honesty between them. And Eli confessed he had nowhere else to go because every door he tried led back to the same mistakes, and Margaret confessed she had been waiting for something she couldn't name, not a person but a feeling, the feeling that her story wasn't over yet, and the twist neither of them saw coming was that shelter became exchange, because as he repaired her house she repaired his belief in steadiness, and as she offered him space he offered her sound, pulling a battered guitar from his bag and filling the house with melodies that made the walls remember laughter. And slowly the town noticed, the way small towns always do, whispering about the strange pair, the young drifter and the widow by the sea, judging what they didn't understand. But judgment had lost its power over Margaret years ago, and Eli had learned early that approval was a currency he could no longer afford. And when winter came hard and fast and Margaret fell ill, it was Eli who sat by her bed reading aloud from books her husband once loved, learning that love could exist without romance and devotion without promise. And when she recovered she looked at him with tears not of weakness but of awakening, realizing that at 60 she was not meant to fade quietly but to begin loudly, to paint again, to sing again, to live again. And the greatest twist arrived when an old letter surfaced hidden in a drawer, a letter from Margaret's youth written to herself, a promise never kept, a vow to choose courage over fear. And Eli read it aloud, voice shaking, realizing the words were meant for both of them. And with that realization came change, because Eli decided to stop running and Margaret decided to stop waiting, and together they created something unexpected, a small music studio in the spare room, a place where lost songs found shape and forgotten dreams found breath, and people came not because it was perfect but because it was honest, and Eli's music grew roots instead of wings, grounding him instead of tearing him apart, while Margaret's laughter returned not as nostalgia but as proof. And when the world finally knocked back, offering Eli a chance to leave, a real chance this time, he stood at the door where he once begged for shelter and understood that beginnings don't erase endings, they honor them. And Margaret hugged him knowing that love does not mean holding on but believing forward, and as he walked away stronger than he arrived, she stood taller than she had in years, and at 22 he had found shelter, but at 60 she found something greater, a new beginning that did not depend on youth or permission or fear, only on the courage to open a door when life knocks unexpectedly. And the music they created together remained long after footsteps faded, a living proof that time does not decide when your life matters, you do.